Hi, everybody. I am Bart Weiss. I'm the founder and director of the Dallas Video Festival. And this year, one of the things we're doing is getting you, the audience, who are trying to figure out what movies to go see in our festival, a chance to actually meet some of the filmmakers that we for the work that we're showing. And we've got a really great team of filmmakers and a really wonderful film that takes you to a place that you're not expecting. The film is called Almost There, and it's a film that I really love, and about like 2 minutes into the film I knew I wanted to see it, and then near halfway into the film I figured, like, what the what? And it totally makes an incredible twist and a turn. So so we have the two filmmakers here, Aaron Winkerden. Did I get that right?
Close. Wickenden.
Wickenden. Okay.
Yep, you got it.
And Dan, I'm going to get this wrong. How do you spell?
Ribicki. Dan Ribicki.
So you like purposely tried to have two names that were difficult to pronounce, right?
Yes, that was part of our.
When looking for a partner, you say, like, why can't I get at least like Smith or something like that? So why don't we start by talking about how did you guys start working together, and which one of the two of you wants to answer this one?
Go ahead, Dan.
Aaron and I are friends. I think we met in Chicago around the time we both moved there in 2002. And so, there was a project I was thinking of doing in which Aaron sort of came out and did a little bit of filming with me. It didn't, materialize, but we remained friends. And actually, our film begins at a pierogi festival, because Aaron and I were just friends who were going to a pierogi festival in Northwest Indiana to see the unveiling of what was going to be the Guinness Book of World Records world's largest pierogi.
Okay, so for those of us who don't really know and don't live in that kind of community, what is a pierogi?
Aaron?
So, pierogies, so we were just in Korea showing the film a couple of weeks ago. We won the audience award. They had the same question, but basically, the equivalent there is a mandu. Every culture has its own version of a sort of like stuffed, dumpling, thing. So yeah, it's dough, and then anything else can go inside the dough, and it's cooked up, and in Indiana, there's this summer festival. So it's like the time of year you least want to eat this kind of food, but tons of people turn out for it, because it's hot and buttery and kind of intense, but it's sort of one of those delicious summer delights. So, they were setting the Guinness Book World Record, like Dan said, and we wanted just to see this thing. And, it was massive and gnarly and covered in butter. I mean, it's like you'd stretch your arms out. You couldn't hold the whole thing. I mean, it was huge. So we went down there trying to sort of document that and taking pictures, but in the process, we stumbled across Peter Anton, this artist who was there doing portraits of people as they were kind of coming by the festival, and we spent some time with him, and in the process he was like, well, if you're interested in me, why don't you check out my scrapbooks? And he brought out these scrapbooks that documented the whole course of his life in obsessive detail, with writing and photography and glitter, and they were just these amazing, singular, unique kind of objects.
And so when did the bulb go off that, like, this might be a good person to do an interview with?
I think really soon after meeting Peter, we were, compelled, not just by the obsessive detail put into these illustrated scrapbooks, but, just in this character who, now that I think about it, it's sort of like, what is that Charlie Chaplin, smile even though your heart is breaking kind of thing? Like, there's a quality to Peter of, someone who was keeping his spirit alive, but had clearly was in a a difficult place, and there was something there that really drew us to him, and we could feel his need to have his story shared. But although you don't see it, it took 2 years of sort of corresponding and going back to the festival before we actually visited Peter's house to see more of his art, and that's sort of when the story took a big turn.
All right. So, Aaron, do you want to talk about? Oh, Aaron disappeared.
Aaron's just texted me saying his internet died. So, and there he is, just blipped off the screen. So let's hope he comes back, and I'll just keep it going until we see him reappear. Okay.
All right. So tell me about that moment when when you see this place that he lives in, and how you felt walking in there. And was that the first time you were there when you had the cameras there?
That was the first time we were there when we had the cameras there. Absolutely. Like, you know, we brought, you know, Aaron was more, you know, had a nicer camera. I had a little Sure Shot. We were taking some photos and popping off some video.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's intense, Bart. I don't even know how to really describe that moment. I mean, can you think of the most, you know, effed up thing you've ever seen? Like, I have not ever sort of crossed a line into an environment that, and I know this word is overused, but that is truly surreal. Like, truly an area that felt other, like nothing I had ever been in contact with. And, you know, when you see us, you know, in Korea, they kept saying, "Did you just wear the masks because you were being funny?" You know, Aaron's back. Aaron's back. You know, and we were like, no. I mean, nobody had been in his house for so long, and there were a medley of molds. It was a condition the likes of which, you know, it's really hard to describe. I mean, the best compliment, not that, you know, that I think we've gotten, is people saying, "I could smell the house, you know, from your footage. I could tell what you were, you know, dealing with." So.
And viscerally, I mean, you totally, as you're walking in there, you can see the how you're reacting, and you know, and you get this sense of like, what have I gotten myself into? Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And you know, in a sense, like the books kind of gave you a hint of that, because it shows that sort of obsessiveness. But until you see the space that he lives in, it's hard to sort of understand his character. And to me, like, that's like, you know, obviously a key moment in the film. And then when you walk in there, I mean, little did you know how much you would be walking into his life and what that sort of meant for you. So Aaron is back by the miracle of the internet.
Amazing.
And, do you want to pick up the story from there? So you guys meet him, you go into his house, and then, so how does the story pick up from there?
Well, you know, once, and hopefully the internet survives, I'm keeping my eye on my router, so, you know, hopefully it stays intact. But if I drop out,
we'll call out for.
Okay. So yeah, so we got to Peter's house, and you know, it was this, you know, once we got in there, it sort of put us into this place with as filmmakers where, you know, on one hand, you know, we were fascinated by his art and really interested in it, and on the other hand, we have this person living in peril, and so, you know, you really put into a sort of moral dilemma. And, you know, I think that it also put us into the place where we had to make a decision, you know, like how much of our own presence is going to be in the film.
Right.
You know, and you know, we didn't set out to sort of include ourselves in the film, but you know, Peter was a guy who would only have someone visit him like once a month. You know, he was very isolated yet extremely social, and so whenever we'd go to see him, he was just, you know, brimming with excitement to hang out with us and wanting to talk. And so, you know, the sort of documentary idea of just sort of like, well, you know, why don't you just pretend we're not here and we're going to see the things you do, and you know, just ignore us, like, you know, we even tried that at the beginning and it just didn't feel right. And particularly as we were editing the film and we were watching the footage, the places where it really came alive was in these interactions, was in this kind of dynamic and navigating it. So, you know, everything about this project was very organic, you know, so we just followed our instincts to that material and sort of built the film out around that.
So let me ask you about the editing then, because, you know, coming from a place where you're mostly observing and not participating. How did it feel sitting in the editing room, looking at yourselves reacting and separating yourself as a character in a film from your own like ego and universe, and do I look fat, or how am I coming off within this scene, which is sort of naturally human? How could you not do that in a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, Dan can speak to this more directly, but editorially, once we sort of realized that was sort of where a lot of the magic was happening in the film, in those interactions, then it became a piece where we needed to navigate those things, and we always, once we decided we wanted to go down that road, it became an issue of like, well, how do we balance Peter's point of view with our point of view, and that became a really exciting thing to kind of a challenge as an editor of the film. But Dan can speak more to the actually being on screen and what that's like to see your face, large. And, I give a lot of credit to Dan for being able to be so vulnerable in the film, and to be, as willing to kind of open up as Peter was about his life. Oftentimes you don't see that in films where, you're asking a lot of your subject to open up, to share every bit of their life with you, but you're not doing that yourself. And so Dan, put himself in that same sort of rigorous situation, and can talk about it a little bit more.
So and so after this, do you want to be a movie star?
No. Actually, the weirdest thing about it is because we've been involved so long, is that I kind of have reached a point where I've forgotten that I'm in the film. But if we're at festivals, and I'm there for a day or two after we screen, people get up out of their chairs and come over to me, and so that gets to be great. It's nice for a while, but then you just want to hide out in your room or something, right? To just not have to, in a way, I would say that Aaron's right. I'm really interested, first of all, in the exchanges that happen between subjects and filmmakers, and I feel like the stuff that I'd like to see is oftentimes not included in the film. I'm interested in those negotiations and those power dynamics, and Aaron's right. I actually feel that if you're going to ask something of somebody else, you should be willing to give up as much of what you're asking of yourself. And so in this particular film, and as we continued to work on it, and our friends said, "Why are you with this man?" after what happened in the middle of the film, it became more apparent that this, like Aaron said, was where a lot of the tension in the film was. And also, I am interested in pulling that veil back on what filmmakers are like, and how the filmmakers' motivations relate to what you're seeing on the screen. I mean, I will say that it's great that we collaborated, and we also, had a lot of great help and guidance from Steve James, who made a film called Stevie, in which Steve himself appears, and which was a really complicated film for him to make. And I'm also, as a collaborator, Aaron's not just a great co-director, but Aaron's maybe one of the best editors working in documentary right now, having edited The Interrupters with Steve James, and having just edited Finding Vivian Maier, Best of Enemies, and so I feel like I've got it really lucky that he was there with me. And at a certain point, I think that, once you face that first flush of embarrassment of having to hear your voice and see your face and go through all that horror for a couple days, you can just start to see yourself as a character. And you really have to start to think of yourself not as a fully dimensionalized person, but just as a character that it needs an arc in a film. And like I said, I think Aaron, who's an expert at this, and Steve James and others were really able to help me keep perspective on that.
So Dan, let me ask you, as somebody who also teaches, do you talk about this in class, about what it's like to be in front of the camera as well as behind the camera?
Yes. I mean, I think that, I've taught a lot of documentary classes, and the students, I think just like audiences in festival, they really like interacting with the subjects of films. And so, in a way, I think that it helps my students understand that when they're asking something of their subjects, they should be willing to give the same thing of themselves. And, I think in part I was motivated to do this because, my students are very wary of the God eye at this point in documentary. I think there is this sense of wanting to know what motivations the filmmakers have, to sort of add another intertextuality to the experience of seeing a film. You know, I myself, when I see these sort of, you know, the filmmaker is not there, I'm more interested in what's going on. Like, is the filmmaker going out for, you know, 3 martinis later after they've, you know, gone back and filmed their footage in Rwanda? I'm really interested in those sorts of tensions between the filmed and the filmmaker. And so, and I think my students are as well.
Yeah, our next film is going to be called Martinis in Rwanda.
Martinis in Rwanda.
So I could just imagine, like, you know, Al Maisel shooting in Rwanda, having a martini afterwards.
Right?
You know,
Wouldn't that be a great film? Just you know, post Rwanda with Al Maisel in a martini.
actually, we should just be like drinking with Al.
Missed opportunities.
Yeah, well, I've had a drink or two with Al in my life, and
Oh, good.
kind of wonderful.
You know, we actually met him at his cinema, you know, just before he passed. Our executive producer, Gordon Quinn, was up there screening Hoop Dreams, and he was amazing. And we talked about our film, and he was really willing and wanting to have us show it up there and do a Q&A with him, because Grey Gardens was a real inspiration for us, and obviously the Maisel brothers and the way that they worked with those people as well were inspirations.
Yeah, you know, we had Al at our festival many times, and one of the things most people don't know about Al is, like, he will stay at a party until, like, everybody else is gone. He's like the last one to leave, and every time I've been at a party with him, there are like 8 women of different ages who are like staring right into his eyes and hanging on every word. And then what's also really amazing, and like this is just the character of who he was, is like somebody would say like, oh, I'm doing this film in Russia, and you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if you, and like the next week he's on a plane to Russia with somebody he met at a party last week.
Wow.
And he would like do this over and over and over again. I mean, he was just that kind of an amazing guy. And by the way, we're showing In Transit, which is, you know, the
Good.
that he shot and was edited after he passed away. And he had, like 10 years ago, like one of these parties talked about this next project that he'd always been wanting to do. So to kind of see that in fruition is really kind of wonderful. So we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to sort of get to one of the key things, and I don't know who wants to take this. It's like how much of what you happened in this film that is sort of the major sort of dramatic moment, the totally unexpected moment, even more unexpected than coming in and seeing his plays, do we want to tell an audience before they come to see this? Because it's
well,
like, you don't want to, like, you want to tease it, but you can't tell it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and you know, when you show the trailer, you know, I think it kind of gets at it, and you know that, you know, there is a major change that impacts everything in the whole dynamic. But yeah, you can't talk about it too much, or else the audience doesn't have the experience. And that's really what we tried to do with the whole film, is put you in our position and what it's like to navigate all these tricky dynamics. So we try not to talk about it too much beyond just saying that, you know, the film is quite a ride if you're up for it.
All right. So let me see if I can do this. I'm going to hit this button. I'm going to say show now and see if this actually will work. This is like, I have no idea if this is going to happen.
All right.
Hit a button. Oh, no, it's just playing it on my computer. It says like show item, and I've clicked that show item. No, it's not happening. I'm sorry. All right, so you're just going to have to actually come and watch the film. But okay, so
should I play it? Should I play it on my laptop and hold it up for the camera?
No. Because you won't. That's like, oh, so we should also talk about this. I think the graphics in this film are really wonderful and kind of special. So we want to talk about like how you started thinking about them. Of course, there's a reason for that, but like how you went about going that, because there's this look that I think just adds another dimension to the film.
Well, you know, I think that one of the great things we loved about all of the textured writing in Peter's scrapbooks was his handwriting and all the signage that he made, you know. And so we very early on when we were creating demos for funders and stuff, we did have actually a former student of mine who isn't even really a motion graphics person start to work with some of Peter's handwriting, and then once the film was funded through ITVS, and in lieu of really, obviously we cannot pay Peter anything, but we really loved the look of what he did, and because Peter was always labeling everything and keeping track of dates in any way, we were able to sort of, collaborate with Peter by utilizing his graphic abilities, and he would create these sorts of time cards and title cards, and then our motion graphics person was able to work with Peter. So we had someone in California working with Peter, in Indiana, to come up with, this look that's both kind of, textured and handmade, but also, I think, pretty well crafted.
Yeah, I mean, it really, since he is an artist, it's like bringing that work forward, and so the titles become more than titles. They're sort of integrated into the film, the color and the way that it's just really kind of nice.
Yeah, I was just going to say we did it with both the graphics and the music, and in both instances we brought, and also with our environmental cinematographer, we brought all three of them to meet with Peter and spend a day with him. And so, like the music, for example, our composer, who's this amazing guy named Joshua Abrams, a jazz musician in Chicago. He was the original bass player in The Roots way back when. And so Josh, Joshua is his professional, what he likes to use professionally. But so Joshua came with us to India. He spent the day with Peter. Peter played him music from the 1950s, big band, and that really informed the type of music that's in the film. We really wanted that level of integration on, with all the sort of creative aspects of the film. And I've worked on a lot of other films, and usually those elements, music, graphics, happen at the very end. Yeah. With our film, we wanted to integrate them early. We wanted the movie to be infused with that spirit of collaboration, since that's at the heart of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, as you work with Peter and the film sort of progresses, you sort of help him move along and get a show as well. And so, in the sense of, being a documentarian and observing and sort of actively engaging and sort of helping somebody's life, it sort of gets back to the issue about being in the film. How do you sort of talk about that in terms of like we're trying to help this guy as well as document him?
Well, I think that that's what we explore in the film, and I think that we leave open that conversation to see how people, I think, get a real accurate picture of what a filmmaker who is in the process of documenting a character goes through, which is there are times when your role switches over into advocate or into caretaker. I think this film would have been hard for only one of us to make, because literally just maneuvering around Peter's house and helping Peter into cars and stuff made it important for the two of us to be here. But, we wanted the audience to have an awareness of both our presence in an active way, but also in the way that, some more purist documentarians have. There's a point where you see us stepping back as caretakers, and we are not sort of in the film in the last third as much, because we let other people come into Peter's life who did sort of take our place. So, I've always said that, before being a filmmaker, I'm just a human being, and so it's like, that's how I felt in the making of this film, is that, that filmmakers are human beings too, and if you have a film person like this in your presence, it's hard not to try to do something, but it's also complicating.
Right. I'm thinking about Haskell Wexler and sort of talking about, what is your moral position when you are observing something with the camera to, influence it. There was like a joke you once told is like, you see somebody who's starving and what do? Well, you shoot it at 5.6. So it's like, and I think he would say, well, no, you have a moral obligation to do something other than just simply document it so people can know. And I think that's a conversation that documentarians have about where they see their personal role in interfering or connecting to or working with that moment. And I think there was a time when documentary had one way of thinking about that moment and what you do, and now it's all over the place. I mean, in a sense, like I'm talking about developing a podcast about documentary, and one of the things I want to ask everybody in this thing is, like, what is a documentary? Because it's so fluid. There was a time when everybody knew what a documentary was, but now it's like, so actually, why don't I start with you guys? What do you think a documentary is?
No, I know when I see it. Right?
So what you're saying is documentaries like porn.
Well, you're saying that. Yeah. I mean, I think, look, you know, as an editor, it's so exciting that it can be so fluid, that it can be anything. You know, that it can take so many different shapes. So I think that that's kind of what makes it beautiful, and hopefully the shapes that it takes is in response to the material and in dialogue with it. So, you know, whether it's, you know, observational or subjective or essay, I mean, it's wonderful to have to be able to embrace all the complexity of it. So yeah, I think that it's an exciting time, and I don't know if I'd define it specifically as any one thing. I mean, you know, we also love. There's this film festival called True False, which is in Columbia, Missouri, you know, and I've been going there for like 6-7 years, and, you know, so we had our film play there, which was one of, you know, the highlights of this whole experience for me. And they try to program films that sort of walk this line between fact and fiction, and, you know, have you know, and try to find films that play with that line. So that's, you know, another place documentaries can exist. So you know, whether it's you know, I edited a Best of Enemies, like Dan was saying, which a friend of ours called a talkie, you know, where it's like talking heads in archival, a talkie. You know, films can be that, or they can be a mishmash like our film. So yeah, my answer is a non-answer.
Yeah, I don't think the word means much these days. Like, I think that, you know, what everyone is doing is making a film. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that documentary might be an outdated word to describe what has now become an art form that I think is experiencing some of the most fresh and exciting formal, you know, varieties that you could find. I always start off my intro to doc class, or at least recently, by showing the students The Imposter, which is, you know, it plays like a feature film, and there's so many things that are shot that, you know, for those who sort of are coming into the class thinking of documentary as one thing, this is a real eye-opener. And I think that right now...
Uh-oh.
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 His internet has died. But he's got this nice, like, look on his face.
I know. Is that how I looked when my internet died earlier?
No, it wasn't nice. It wasn't nearly as nice.
Oh no, that's embarrassing. That's too bad.
So let me give you my quickie definition, and this is just my working way. It's to me, it's a film with a high level of truthiness.
Yeah.
The Colbertism, and so there's this whole sense of navigation. He's back live.
Oh, I got frozen.
It's frozen in time. So that's a document in and of its own way.
Yeah.
So we have to wrap this up soon, but I do want to talk about one other thing. So this comes from Kartemkin, which is like this wonderful. There's so many wonderful films that are involved in this. Can you tell people what exactly it is? Who wants that one?
You want to do that?
Sure, what Kartemkin is? Well, so Kartemkin has been
and what is a Kartemkin?
What isn't, or what is?
What the name? Where does the name come from?
Oh, where does the name come from? Okay, so Cartumpquin is a combination of three names: Carter, Temner, and Quinn, and they were the three founders of Cartumpquin back in the '60s. Currently, and for quite a while now, the only founder that has continued with the company is Gordon Quinn, and he was the executive producer on our film. Also was the executive producer on Stevie, if not the producer. I have to double check that. And so Cartumpquin has this really rich legacy. They're actually coming up on their 50th year, which is next year. So it's kind of a major milestone. They're one of the oldest and longest continually running documentary film companies in the world. And so to have that kind of like rich legacy come into to be able to interact with that, to be able to have Gordon give notes on our film, I mean, it's extremely helpful to us throughout the process. So what is a Cartumpquin film? Well, Cartumpquin films, rather than sort of saying like, I want to talk about this issue, they start with people. They're like stories about people, and through those stories and through being very specific, then you can be expansive and talk about bigger things. In general, that's one of the qualities that makes a great Cartumpquin film.
Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
I really enjoy the community of filmmakers. When I came to Chicago to teach, I was really excited to know that there was a place like Cartumpquin in existence. We've had, a lot of feedback screenings. We are a collective of filmmakers who are able to support each other's work, and I think I'm inspired by the work that our associates at Cartumpquin, do. So, like Aaron said, I think that Chicago is a great documentary town, and also a town that, I don't know if the term sociology, I've heard the term sociology was invented here or whatever, but I do feel like there is this kind of underlayer of social inquiry to everything that Cartumpquin does that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I have to say I'm really jealous that we don't have anything quite like that. In fact, there's nothing quite like that anywhere, and I think that I think there are many really wonderful things about Chicago, and every time I go there, it's like I'm excited by the diversity of so many great film things that are happening. But having that there as kind of a core of a documentary universe is just, I think, really special. And I can't think of anything I've ever seen coming out of there that wasn't really wonderful in some special kind of way. And I think that it's the community of filmmakers feeding off of each other that I think really kind of makes it special. So do you guys have any? What's that?
Come and visit maybe for Pierogi Fest next year. We'll take you to Cartumpquin and then take you to Pierogi Fest.
Yeah.
Maybe get your portrait done by Peter.
Oh, that would be really great. So let's wrap this up by, is there like any one thing you could tell somebody about why they need to come and see this movie? Who wants to take that? Here's your chance to be Mr. Promo.
Well, I guess, Aaron, you can wrap it up after I say this, but we've been to, I think, 20 festivals. It's been amazing to see the responses from people. And the one thing I would say is that this movie is funny. Okay, this movie is funny, and there is laughter throughout. Okay, if it leads to tears, that's okay. But I think the one thing that is surprising about our film is that I do believe it's a laugh riot, and it's really entertaining. And that has been the most heartening part of it, is that we wanted to capture the spirit of our subject Peter, who showed us that in times of unimaginable struggle, there is always a place for humor, and I think that comes through in the film. So people who come to this film will not just see a lot of art and a lot of
drama,
but there's also a lot of humor. Right, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we set out to do is make something that, where we followed our intuition and we made something singular. And so I don't know if you'll ever have a chance to see another film quite like this. So I'd recommend it.
Me too. Me too.
And me too. I would definitely recommend it.
Okay.
Thanks.
It is a very enjoyable experience, and it's, you know, you would think, I mean, getting to that whole sort of discussion about documentary, that, you know, back in the 60s, people thought of documentaries as educational films and like something you have to go and see, and you know, the medium has evolved. This is like highly entertaining as well as being like a wonderful experience and a wonderful ride to be with, and so beautifully crafted. You know, it's like, it's not just that your souls are with this person, but the attention to detail about how it's constructed, the editing, the photography, is really quite beautiful, and it makes the experience really special.
Thanks, Bart.
Thanks, Bart. Thank you.
All right, so guys, thank you so much, and now you are no longer Google Hangout virgin, so
Right.
like,
We made it through. We froze up a couple times, but we made it through.
absolutely. So thank you so much for spending your morning with us, and we really appreciate. And of course, we look forward to the next collaboration that you do. So who knows what you? So if you came down to the State Fair of Texas, you would meet somebody really interesting, and the next 10 years of your life would be coming down to Texas all the time.
Butter sculpture. Butter sculpture. That's what I'm going to focus on next.
Right. Not great for your cholesterol, but
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a
Bart.
great day. Hello,
All right.
Dallas.
thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.